I do put respect into everything I do. And so my first day of school, my mother is taking me into the school and we see a guy walking down the hallway with a gun. He's got a Uzi. Food helped me get through a lot in life. Food, music, and TV, boy, I tell you. You on the train and you just looking at people. You seeing different cultures. New York is the melting pot. But he didn't know at 12 years old I needed him. I mean, my mom, she'd always liked to help people. And so I was like, I help people. It just came to my mind, leaders of men.
Who you really know that's gonna show and prove, nothing less. Who you really know that's gonna pour in you, bring out the best. Who you really know that's really loyal, and like the rest, hit them with a...
Peace and blessings. You are tuned in with the Rooted In podcast, where we gain an understanding and overstanding of the guests to get an insight to how their life has shaped them to be who they are today. This episode is presented by In the Clouds Media, and I'm LJ Hippie, the sole proprietor of OPM Vision, the head of the security for this building. And so right now, sitting across from me to the left of our special guest is he's a mentor of mine. He's he's a founder of SWA, which we'll get into that more often. But to the right of him is a leader who we're going to emphasize, the respect is everything. So we need more leaders. We need to be seen. But not only is he a man that is also a leader, he is the leader of men. And we're going to touch on that. So we're talking about somebody who's seen the wildest eras from the East Coast and the West Coast and has brought that back to the youth. So I'm talking about none other than Anthony Mcdonald. So Thank you for taking the time to come and sit down with us, brother.
No, I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for the opportunity.
Most definitely. And just to give a shout out, the person who connected us is Mykel Gayent, South Sac Wellness Alliance. He's the connection to this, and we're going to touch on why this is necessary. So just before we do dive into the background, I just want to give you your flowers right here in this room. So what you're doing is nothing less than legendary. So I definitely want to let you know that from the leaders of men, the work that you're putting in, even from being just boots on the ground, just meeting with the youth at the park, and even showing them a better way. And even as something as simple as, just turning on, just doing what's called the lost art of firing up a grill, yes, and get down to that. So first and foremost, what kind of inspired that to come about?
I started Leaders of Men in the garage. My older brother was killed walking home. And it sent me into a depression, right? I just lost my mom, and then one of my great friends had passed away in his sleep, and then my brother got killed, and it sent me into a depression. So I'm in the garage, and asking God. I start talking to God. What can I do? What should I do? And those things. And then I hear Steve Harvey come on the TV, and he says, "Stop running from your gifts and your dreams." Right. And so I start thinking, what are my gifts? What are my dreams? I left school early, in the 10th grade. I can barely read and write still. I read my first book at 40 years old, and so then it just came to me, my mom, she'd always liked to help people. And so I was like, I help people. So let me, and then it just came to my mind, leaders of men. You can be a mentor, and then, and I turned it into a business, and then I worked it out to where I can turn it into not an LLC, but a nonprofit. And God willing, we passed the very first time. We got a determination letter, and it passed, man. And then, how you start building anything, it start evolving, and you start having these ideas that we were talking earlier. We're dreamers. And so everything that I learned and went through as a young man, I just added that to Leaders of Men. And what helped you get through was respect, self-respect, as you talked about in New York, knowledge of self. And so as I started thinking about that, and I'm starting to write it down, and it's becoming our principles. So at Leaders of Men, our principles are respect, self-respect, self-management, character, empathy, gratitude. We talk about domestic violence among teenagers. We talk about bullying and peer pressure. We talk about dressing for success, setting goals, how to become a leader. So some of those things, man. But that's Leaders of Men.
Wow. Okay. So that's definitely a need to say that we need that here in Sacramento. So yes, there's always a leadership deficit, in companies and in just the communities overall. And what drew me towards you was just hearing about the impact that you've been making in the Bay Area, and that's thanks to Mike, you know. But
Yes, sir. My man.
so that's why this podcast episode is very important because we're going to touch on why this is needed here in Sacramento, you know. And just I wanted to discuss the local footprint and the collaboration that you have with Mike, you know,
sir.
so we can lead into the expansion that's about to come. So like first off, what can people of Sacramento expect from the Leaders of Men maybe in the near future? Just with what you've already been building up in the Bay Area.
You know, it's leadership. It's mentoring. As we talked about earlier, one thing that's missing, not just in Sacramento but everywhere, it's the lack of respect. You know, and it's with our youngsters or our parents teaching our youngsters, the respect part. And the like I said, the importance of self respect and carrying yourself a certain way. My mom used to say, "You represent me when you go out this house. You represent me," and that always stuck with me. And so I think you should care how people see you. You know what I mean? And I was taught that when you walk through a door, people are going to see three things: your color, right? And no matter what color you are, don't try to change that for anybody. Be proud of who you are, right? And the second thing is how you're dressed, and you can dress for success, or you can have a hoodie on and they'll treat you a certain way. And the third thing is what comes out of your mouth. Is it respectful? Is it disrespectful? Is it hate? Those things. You have a choice. And having knowledge of self and knowing who you are, you start to understand that you have within you right now to take on the world. You know what I mean? So, and that's what we try to instill into our youngsters, but it's more how they carry themselves these days, and not all. We have some very respectful youngsters, but it seems that the world is only highlighting the kids with their pants down or the girls with the bonnets or, young people wearing their pajamas to school and those things. It's, we missing a lot of self-respect there. So.
You're speaking on building kings and anchoring the community, you know. So that's definitely where we talked about that at the healing circle too. That's where I met Mike, and we had to give an account on what respect is. And when I was asked, I had to express. I said, I think respect deals with admiration. You know, there's things that you do and don't do based off of what you admire about the person or the thing that's presented. But so I just want to say too, I salute you for that because there's a lot of us youth that don't really understand how to even articulate what that is. And I like how that's more of the subtitle, but the brand just within the brand where respect is everything. So we are going to have a huge event in November, and as a matter of fact, Mike, I'd like you to introduce exactly what we have to look forward to.
Well, on November 7th, which is Saturday, I think we're going to do it from 12 to 4. We've already got the venues in place. We're going to have the Leaders of Men Rites of Passage program. What I'm doing, as you know, I try to bring to the community, organizations and people who can help empower our community. So not only, of course, we have many here in Sacramento already, and I'm going to invite many of these organizations to come in and be seen, come in and do workshops for us. But I thought it was a real thing for me to kind of act on a promise that he and I made to one another, that we were going to work together. We've been talking about this for about 5 or 6 years, and it's just time. We just had a Black Boys and Men's Empowerment Summit that went really well. This is going to tie into that. I'm really so excited to be a part of this. I'm on the board. I'm getting ready to start the non-profit procedures, and Brother Anthony's going to be on this board, and we're going to work hand in hand. I mean, I'm not going to just bring him up here. I'm going to follow his lead. I'm going to be working on doing some wellness coaching myself, some mentoring. I do mentoring some youth from time to time, but my focus hadn't been on youth, but it is. I'm turning my focus to youth now because it's the youth that's going to run the world in just a very short time. So we got a lot of work to do to get them ready.
100%.
Yes, sir.
And I'm with you guys. So November 7th, Rites of Passage, be there. There's going to be Leaders of Men. It's going to be the South Side Wellness Alliance. In the Clouds is going to be there. It's going to be a networking opportunity, but it's going to be, let's say, the catalyst for what's to come.
And don't forget, it's going to be right here at the Digital Cafe,
Yes,
2251 Florin Road.
There we go.
At the Florin Center.
Shout out to Peter, the owner of the Digital Cafe. So yes, it's going to be here at this building known as Sacramento's Black Wall Street. Thank you for that, Mike. So I'm interested to unpack your story, and I like how you mentioned the knowledge itself, because I'm big on that. I end up clashing with my loved ones from them not understanding, but it's for those that do care to seek or that care to know that knowledge is the foundation. Yes, but so now the focus is on you, though. You had mentioned just before we started that you had spent some time in Brooklyn, but can you take us through the process of, was it here in California that you were born and got your upbringing, or where did the start for you?
Yes, I mean, I was born in Berkeley. My father was in the Navy,
okay.
And so we lived in naval housing. And so, and then moving to East Oakland as a baby, and living all over Berkeley and East Oakland and those things. And then, when I was 12, we moved to San Diego. We lived there for a while in some shelters, and it was some rough times, and those things. And then we moved to Brooklyn, New York, with the frying pan into the fire, man, and a lot of. It's a culture shock. A young kid coming from East Oakland, and braids in your hair, and you
right.
coming to New York, and it's robbing and stealing everywhere. It's rope chains and getting snatched, and purses getting snatched, and you got to fight everybody, and bullying is at a all-time high, and those things, man. So you got to speed up, you got to catch up, and you got to learn how to defend yourself more. You gotta, now we know at 12 years old, I need to work out. Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you gotta lift weights, man, and you gotta do push-ups and, those things. And everybody's not your friend, and the hustle game is real, and those things, man, but I met some great people. You always surround yourself with like-minded people.
Yes.
And those things, as we were talking earlier, no matter where you are, you're going to find your people, or they'll find you. And so, and then going to New York, man, I wasn't a school guy. I could still barely read and write. So in the 7th grade, I would just leave school, get on the train, and just go around New York. Manhattan, and I would just be in Manhattan, and I'd be around Brooklyn and those things. So I was a student of life, and meeting people and those things. So when I got out of school, I would go to work. So we lived on Utica Avenue in Brooklyn. And so Utica Avenue, I worked at let me see, I started at 12 years old. So I worked at Mr. Brown's plant store. I worked at Mrs. Black's liquor store. I'm going up Utica Avenue, working my way. So I worked there. Like I said, Mr. Irving's plant store, Mrs. Black's liquor store, and then I worked for Mr. Jordan, which is the Monaco Lounge. And then I worked at A. Brown Pest Control, which we lived upstairs. And then I worked across the street at One Stop Shopping. Wow. And then I worked at Mike's grocery store on the corner. So in New York, you either rob and steal, you hustle, you find your way. Me, even when I left California, I was going to Safeway and Lucky's and carrying grocery bags for 10 cents and a nickel, and you hope to get a quarter, right. You know what I mean? And we were eating day-old donuts, you know what I mean? So, but that was my thing. Like I said, I wasn't a thief or anything, so I would carry grocery bags to the car and then, try to bring some of that money home to my mom. And then even in New York, it wasn't about school. It was about working, so I just spent most of my time working, and the only bad thing about that is that people will take advantage of you, of a kid. Right. You know what I mean? And so, but once again, I did surround myself with some good people that you saw. One thing about New York was mom and pop shops. All up in this you got every small business, right. But you don't know it's a small business. You know what I'm saying? You just know these people own their own businesses. So I think that really got to me. You know what I mean? I really, as I got older and moved back to California, and now all the big businesses, like, wow, with New York, though, they own little mom and pop shops.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that drove the neighborhood, you know. So, but those things helped me get through and shape the person who I am, and making a promise to my mother, I'm not a liar, a cheater, or a thief. I'm going to always be the best man I can be. Not to say I didn't do some stupid stuff.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And learn as you go, like we all do. But at the end of the day, your conscience, you know what I'm saying? Let your conscience be your guide. You know what I mean? So that's, that's growing up in New York. you know?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I definitely like that. Let your conscience be your guide, So being a man of character is definitely something that's valuable to you.
Yes.
So you gave us some insight as to what it's like in New York. So I'm curious, like what would like a summer afternoon be like for a young Anthony here in California, or just even in the Bay Area,
So moving back to California in 84, 85, it was just getting ready to turn from 84 to 85. We moved to 69th and Wells Street.
Crucial.
And what is the cat name? The big drug dealer had just passed. I can't remember my man's name, but he had passed in 69th and Wells Street, East Oakland. It was the 69th Village. And it was gangs now. When I left California, it wasn't gangs like that.
Right.
And now you have, 69th and Wells Street. You got the, you got Funktown. You got, you got Sabrani Park. You got, it's all of these different crews. And so I went to Castlemont. And some people out there, you'll see this, and you at Castlemont, East Oakland, one of the toughest schools out there, And so my first day of school, my mother's taking me into the school, and we see a guy walking down the hallway with a gun. He's got a Uzi in the school. And then my mom starts crying. She goes, I say, Mom, don't cry. It's going to be all right. She's like, I took you out of New York and brought you right back into this. You know what I mean? Right. So, but it was what it was. Once you go through New York, you live in New York for 5 years, you're ready for anything.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You're ready for anything. And then I still found parties in California, and then we used to throw parties. Sometimes we would do a 3-day party, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, party. And it would just go constantly, but we would walk all over East Oakland, man, and go to parties and those things when I was 17 and then 18. And, I moved out of my mom's house when I was 18. It's just time to go. And so my sister gave me my first apartment. She said, if you can afford the rent, you can have the apartment. So
okay, that's a blessing.
Yeah, forget school. I'm already 2-3 grades behind in school. So I just dropped school, started working in San Lorenzo, at Hutch's Car Wash and Wendy's and those things. Yeah, man, just doing that. And then I turned 19 and then my best friend got shot 8 times in San Francisco. And I was supposed to be with them that night, but I had to get up and go to work, so I didn't go. And you get the phone call, hey man, Lynn just got killed, and we were living on Lockwood in 73rd, and so this was like 1985, 86, and then so it was those times, man. It was those times. So no matter where I've been, it's been some tough times, So
right,
yeah.
Okay, so. What would you say were some of the unwritten rules of the block, that you had to learn as a kid just so you can move smoothly just around that area?
Yeah, unwritten rules or written rules, respect yourself. 100%. Carry yourself with respect, and people will see your weakness or they'll see your strengths. Your weakness, they're going to try to take advantage of you. Your strengths, they're going to try to break you down. You know what I'm saying? So stand as a man, put your chest out, look people in the eyes, and respect yourself. You know what I'm saying? And they'll 100%. Recognize game. The game recognize game. That's it right there. So
100%. What would you say was one of your favorite places to hang out in the Bay Area, and what about it made it feel like yours?
My house.
Yeah. There ain't no place like home.
My mom always partied at the house. We had a lot of parties at the house. And so when I got my first place, all my friends would always just come to my house. And so my house has always been that. And I'll tell you, even when I met my wife and I brought her to my house and she looked around my house, she's like, you got all this dead weight. And I'm like, no, that's not dead weight. You know, she was like, no, you got somebody living in your van. You got somebody living in the back room. You got two guys on the couch. You got somebody on the floor. And I said, but you don't know, like the two young men that's on the couch, one is 11 years old and one is 13 years old. They came to live with me because, you know, the mother moved to Portland. The father is on drugs. And my roommate at the time, he said, can my nephews come live with us? And I was like, okay, we ain't really got in a room, but they got the couches. So, you know, and then we raised them for about 1.5 years, 2 years. They're grown men doing their things now, you know, but, you know, and I was, you know, I got it from my mother just to help people. You help people down on their luck. And then my wife saying that it was dead weight, we did a podcast about a month ago, and one of the questions was, what is one of the things that made you fall in love with him and what made you fall in love with her? She was like, one of the reasons why I fell in love with him and that I didn't know at the time was that he helped people, you know, and with that, you know, they really needed help. And I didn't charge people or anything like that. But, you know, if you got it, you know, and you can help people, you know what I mean? And without a big cost to you and just to show those young men or those men that, you know, I help raise or whatever. And you're just doing your thing, man. And God's going to guide you. You know, 100%. God's going to guide you. One of the guys was 15 back then. I mentor his son now in my class. He's passed away 2 years now. But once he was in my class and he was talking, he said, I was saying, you know, who's somebody you really respect? And he said, my dad. And I said, okay, why'd you respect your dad? He was like, well, my dad's passed away now, but he was a business owner in Fairfield. And I said, what kind of business? He said, yeah, he owned 2 motorcycle shops. Wow. And I said, what was your dad Rondell? He was like, yeah. I said, dude, I was your father OG. You know what I'm saying? I was your father. You know what I'm saying? Your father used to come to my house all the time, you know, and those things, man. And, you know, much respect to your father, man. I loved and respect your father. You know what I mean? There was, of course, the age difference, you know what I'm saying? But my house was always the open house. Like my mother's house was the open house. So not everything, but a lot of things I got from my mom on how to treat people. You know, and if I give any praise, it'll be to her.
That's love. Yeah. Shout out to moms. Shout out to
rest
moms.
in peace. Yeah.
So, the house being the house, I would like to know about your siblings. You know,
Okay.
we did a little research. You have 5 siblings, right?
Well, I have with my mother 5.
Okay.
My father had 2 sons.
2 sons.
So
gotcha.
it's like 7 total.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know, other 2 I didn't grow up with. My younger brothers, I seen them like once a year.
Okay.
You know, and then my other younger brother, I seen him maybe every 10 years. You know, so it was sort of crazy because my youngest brother grew up with my father. And my other brother grew up in the Fillmore in San Francisco. He grew up in West Oakland. You know, his life was a crazy life. You know, running the streets, hustling, and those things. My other brothers, and my sisters, we grew up together up into a certain age. But for the most part, it was me and my 2 brothers. It's Raymond Anthony Terrell. Our name's spelled Rat. You know, so you know, and that's my mom. She didn't call you one. She's Raymond Anthony Terrell. You know what I'm saying? Get in here. And so we leaned on each other a lot. Our friends were the same friends. We fought the same fights. 100%, you know, we were there for each other. Those things. And my older brother was killed walking home. My other younger brother, he was killed hustling in the streets. But my other younger brother, you know, he came up hard too. But he ended up being a great businessman. You know, he left school in the 8th grade, and my older brother left school in the 9th grade. I left school in the 10th grade. You know, but my younger brother, he ended up owning a car wash and a clothing store, and he owned a crispy crunchy chicken, and you know, and now he owns a I forgot what it's called, but they put computers in cars and music in cars and those things, and he's teaching his sons, you know, those things. And it's a trip that none of us graduated high school, but all of our children graduated high school and touched some college. You know what I mean? So that's a blessing. You know what I mean? So, and then my sisters, you know, we have a strange relationship, you know, because of personal reasons and those things. But I still love my sisters. They're still my sisters. And if they ever call, I'll be there, you know, those things. But, you know, pretty close, my brothers and I, because we went through those same battles. But those were my best friends. Those were my brothers, Raymond and Terrell. Yeah.
Shout out to the family. So you pretty much gave an idea of the atmosphere on what it was like having those siblings, and kind of like having a revolving door of the neighborhood friends.
Yes.
But do you care to give a rundown of the siblings' names?
Yeah, it's my oldest sister is Jeanette. Then I have my sister Teresa. Then there's my brother Raymond, who passed away.
Rest in peace.
Then there's myself, and then my brother Terrell, and then my brother Alwyn, who passed away, and then my brother Kareem. So which he just got his pilot license.
Congrats.
To take after my father. My father was a pilot. Yeah, he worked for United Airlines 38 years as an aircraft mechanic. When he retired, he was an aircraft inspector. And then he also owned 2 double-engine planes. So he taught himself how to become a pilot. And then when he just passed away a couple of years ago, my brother made it a point to get his pilot license.
Okay,
you know? Yeah, in memory of my father. So, yeah.
Man, you and your family been doing things at a very young age.
Yes.
And you mentioned starting to work in Brooklyn. Was that at around age 10? Or was that your
No,
first
I
time
was
that
working in East Oakland at about 10 and 11.
Oakland.
So I was, you know, people call hustling,
right.
but it's actually working. If I'm at a grocery store and I'm standing in front of the store and I'm saying, hey, can I carry your bags to the car and help you with your bags? You know, yeah, it's hustling, but it's still working. And so that's where I got that from. And then going to San Diego, and as we're homeless there, I got a job at a shoe shine place. And it was like a shoe shine, shoe repair place. And, you know, he didn't really give you no money, but he gave some change and those things. And we were able to get day-old donuts there as well. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So there. And then, so when I got to New York, I was 12. And like I said, not being in school at 12 years old, you know, and then working all of those jobs, knowing how to sell yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean? Say, I can work, and I'm always going to lead with respect. Yes, sir. No, sir. Right. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, sir. You know what I'm saying? Those things. And OGs like that. Right. And so they hire you, you know, and they're going to give you a lot of money, you know what I'm saying? But they're going to hire you, and they're going to give you some game more than anything. So I learned how to talk to people. I learned how to be accountable. You know what I'm saying? I learned how to put in the hard work, working those jobs. You know what I mean? So, and then coming back to California and, you know, working at a Wendy's or at a car wash, or, you know, putting 30 years in the warehouse, you know, those things, you know, so it's the work ethic. So.
Definitely. Okay. Do you remember the day that you found out that you were going to leave Oakland? And
as a kid?
Yeah.
No, I just graduated high school. I mean, 6th grade. The moment I was graduating in 6th grade, and Mom said, "Hey, we packing up, we moving," and I'm saying bye to my girlfriend. That was it. We're out.
Right. So it's safe to say how you felt. You were just ready to go. You were just.
Oh no, we didn't want to go. Right. We didn't want to go. You just imagine picking up and leaving all your friends. It's tough. You know what I mean? It's tough. And, you know, we're supposed to, you're in the 6th grade, so all your friends are going to the junior high school where you're supposed to be going, and then high school. You know what I mean? And you're supposed to end that with them, you know, but it didn't work out that way. So, you know, but I do believe that, and every time I go back to an old neighborhood, they say your family impacted the neighborhood. No matter where 100%. We went, my family, because my mother was the mother of the neighborhood,
Mom
You
of the
know,
block.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, you go. So my mom was that. Yeah.
That's interesting. What was the biggest cultural adjustment you had to make from going from the Bay Area to there to Brooklyn? Or actually, wait, no, from San Diego. What was the biggest cultural adjustment that you were experiencing?
Well, it's the culture. It's always the culture. Once again, San Diego was it was more Latinos, more Mexican folks there, but it was gangs. You know, I remember them coming to get my brother, and they was going to try to jump him into a blood situation. You know, and just so happens my grandmother passed, and we moved out of there. And then going to New York, it's a gang situation,
Right.
you know, where they come to get my same brother, you know, to come fight, because if you live in this neighborhood, you can't be no suckers. You know what I'm saying? So you got to fight. You know, you got to prove yourself. You know, so that was, you know, that was culture. But I tell you that food, it was food with me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Different cultures, different foods. So learning all those foods in San Diego, well, East Oakland, first learning all this food there, and then going to San Diego, but then going to New York. So New York was the first place I tried Chinese food.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And you can go to on the corner store to King Ming and get you 4 wings and rice, or four, you know what I'm saying, a half a chicken and fries, or whatever, or you know what I mean? So that, and then my family's Jamaican, and so my grandmother lived in Queens, and so we would go to her house, and you know, you got you know, Jamaican peas and rice, and you got the neck bones, and you got, you know, jerk chicken, and those, you know, those things. My grandmother made it all, plantains, and you know, beef patties, and you know what I mean? So now more food, different types of food, you know, so food helped me get through a lot in life. You know what I'm saying? Food, music, and TV, boy, I tell you.
Definitely. So just reflecting a little bit further on the transition period, or even then, just from the food, you know, how did that early exposure to different cultures through the food like change your worldview as an 11 or 12-year-old?
So mine was color. I never really had a color line with friends. One of my great friends, we were in the 3rd grade, and his name was Ningo Thong. Ningo Thong. He just moved from Vietnam, you know, and so I would go to his house, and you know, and they're eating their food, which is the noodles. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what is this? You know what I'm saying? I didn't know nothing about it, and I'm good, man. And it didn't look right. You know what I'm saying? So I never really tripped, but they were tearing it up. And then I had another friend named Francisco. No, I can't remember his name, man. But I would go to his house, and his mom would make the Mexican food. And then I had another friend, Ikani. Ikani lived on 12th Ave and East 28th, and their family was roasting pigs in the ground. You know what I mean? So it's like, everywhere it's food. I'm recognizing food. You know, I worked for this lady named Jane when I was 11 years old, and we were talking about the spaghetti. And so she was Italian. She made spaghetti, and she made Italian sausage, and she put other meats in there. And I was like, wow, I never had this. And the crazy thing about it is, as I'm working for her, she raised greyhounds, the dogs. Right. And so I would come to her house, and I would wash her car. I would mow the backyard and the front yard and those things. I was a worker, you know what I mean? And so she was like, you know, Anthony, you were so cool, this and that. Why don't you invite your family to the house, to her house? And so I did. And so I brought my mother and my brothers and sisters over there. And my mother looking at me like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Right. Here is this white lady, and you're working for this white lady, and you know, she's maybe 25 years old. Jane was like 25 years old, and I'm 11 or 12. You know, and so my mom is like, hey, you know, what's going on? And she's like, no, Anthony's great, and he works hard. You know what I'm saying? And this and that, and those things, man. But you know, being kind to people. And being honest and trying your best to be the best person you can be, even as a young man. Definitely. You know, it shapes you. It helps you get through certain situations. So that's how I, got through a lot of my situations, just by being kind and being real, and that's it. So respectful.
Definitely. So you kind of helped to lead into my next question, because I'm doing some research. You wrote a book, The Big
Yes,
Black
sir.
Man.
Yes, sir.
And you had mentioned the Keystone Hotel.
Yes.
And how that was a major chapter for you.
Yes.
But so what was the daily rhythm of that building like, and how did that how did you navigate? Or just firstly, let's backtrack. So let's just tell me a little bit about the Keystone Hotel. What was that like?
So the Keystone Hotel is downtown San Diego. So that means a lot going on downtown San Diego. And it's different cultures in that hotel. My family, it was 5 of us in that. It was like a 10 by 10 room. So it's like 5 of us in that room. It's, like I said, it's just different cultures. We all shared everybody in the hotel, one shower, one kitchen, but in the kitchen is where everybody kind of congregated, if that's the word, congregated, and it was different foods being cooked, and you were able to eat different foods, and wasn't nobody really tripping because we were all kids.
Right.
So there's a lot of kids there. And then me and my brothers, once again, we always stuck together. And so we roamed around. Ours was, roaming around San Diego downtown, going to what if we can get into, those things, and seeing things, man. So, but this Keystone Hotel was cool. The guy Irish, he would take us. He would take me on. He was a cab driver. So I would go with him to drive cabs. You know what I'm saying? I'd be in the passenger side at 12 years old, and he's driving a cab going around San Diego picking up fares. Okay. So I would go with him, and then we had the people, Connie and Blas. Blas would take me into Tijuana with him to go see his family. So first time I had a real pepper. And I ate it. It burnt you up. You say, boy, put hair on your chest. You know what I mean? So those things, man. And I can laugh at those things, man, because, like I said, you didn't know some of the times you didn't know you were poor. And they say poor is a state of mind. You know what I'm saying? So we always had laughter. You know what I mean? We always had fun. Even sometimes, the food wasn't available. My mom had just, applied for the welfare, but we couldn't get that yet. So that took some time. So I remember going to next door to the Pussycat Theater was the soup kitchen.
Okay.
So you get three meals there. So just imagine being 12 years old with they called them bums back in the day, but with all of these homeless people, and you're kids, and you're eating, but we didn't look at it as we were poor or anything. We just did what we did. You know what I'm saying? We just 100%. Did what we did, man. But we stayed together. That was my mom thing, was we stayed together, so yeah.
That's everything, right? And just to touch on the book that I mentioned it, what would you say the main inspiration of the book, The Big Black Man?
It was because the world sees you as a big black man, no matter how old you are. They're going to treat you a certain way because of your color. And if you don't have knowledge of self, you're going to fall for it. You're going to fall for it. And then if anybody goes and you read The Big Black Man, it's a journey through food, but it's a journey through my life, and it just shows how food is a part of every part of your life. Whether it's somebody passes away, there's food at the funeral. Somebody's getting married, there's food at the wedding. Right. There's a birthday party, there's food. Celebrations, there's food. Different kinds of food, different kinds of culture. You know what I mean? One of my great friends, his mom taught me how to make tamales. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's some good stuff. That's actually in the book. But it's food, man. It's just food helps you get through. Food breaks a situation down.
Definitely.
If we all got sitting in here with some food and tearing it up. And I never seen a mad person eating food like, "Arr,"
Right.
you know what I'm saying? And
Right.
it makes you happy, you know what I mean? And food brings joy, man. And you know, it breaks down barriers, and you can have conversations now, and you know, those type of things, man. So it helps with certain situations. Food, you know what I mean? So yeah.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
And I do kind of want to bring Mike back in too, because we just had dinner at his home, you know,
Okay.
and definitely it's culture. Food is culture.
Yes.
And like, it's just a good time to sit down and fellowship and just share ideas or just give feedback and insight as to what's going on.
Yes.
But, so I kind of want to touch on now the leaders of men in Sacramento and SWA.
Yes.
So, like even just eating food and establishing a sense of culture, we know as black men, you know, we definitely need to emphasize the need for wellness, you know, our mental health, and just the need to discuss our resources that we do have available.
Yes.
And a lot of what we're dealing with is not so much a lack of resources, it's just a lack of resourcefulness.
Right.
So I want to kind of ask Mike, you know, or just if both of you guys can chime in. So it's like, so for the leaders of men in Sacramento, what is the plan with the South Sac Wellness Alliance?
We have the what is it? I can't think of the name of it. Dr. Gina Warren. She has her Neighborhood Wellness Foundation. We have some great resources out there. We have Safe Black Space with Dr. Christy Higgins. But there's no matter how many you have, there's just never really enough. I mean, we have thousands and thousands of people, youngsters, adults, older adults that need help, and each of these organizations can only handle a certain amount of people. So there's just not enough. So I want to be a part of that, providing that help that they can get, and it's not coming from my knowledge; it's coming from my knowledge of those who can provide those services. And like when it comes to our youth, our young men, and our young ladies, we need to show in our strengths, what it looks like to respect ourselves. The importance of respecting ourselves, because a lot of times people think, oh, well, they want respect, but they don't understand the true concept of respect. They're saying it from respect on the street, back in the hood, but that's nothing. Right. That's nothing. It's about first of all, who are you? Right. Do you like yourself? Why? Understanding and being taught to figure out your own identity. It's taken me 70 years, but I figured it out finally, you know? So, I mean, and it's a day by day trial, you know, but leaders of men can, you know, can get these youngsters at a very young age and captivate them with you know, with his own personality and the personality of the people that I've known or that's been around him all the times that I've been around. And I mean, it's so powerful. You know, you get them together and make them, they want what they have. And you know this from our men's healing circles and our youth healing circles. It's the same thing, and we just, you know, we just want to be able to reach out to more of the youth in Sacramento.
Yes, sir.
There it is. There. How will the Leaders of Men framework fit into the future vision of the SWA?
Oh, it's everything that I want SWA to be about, is to be about the community. Period. You know, so whatever's necessary. It's just like, you know, just like Anthony's saying, you know, he's there. You know, he's there for you know, for the people. He's there for everybody, and that's what I want SWA to be there for the people, you know, to help guide them down their journey of wellness. It's all about wellness. It's 100%. About wellness and self-care. You know, I mean, you know, my mental health is really important to me. Right. But what's more important to me is not the symptoms, but what I do to manage the symptoms, and that comes from everything, like you said, from food, from being able to work, you know, for being able to laugh. You know, so, I mean, you know, I've had many times when in my depression, I wouldn't allow myself to laugh until I realized, you know what, laughter is the best medicine. That's when I'll go to, you know, go watch stand-up comedy, watch comedy shows. Definitely. I mean, you know, or anything that'll make me happy. You know, music. I love music. You know, I love all kinds of music. I took classical music and piano and guitar when I was young. You know, I came up in the hip hop era when it was just beginning. You know, I played in a funk band. Well, I didn't play. I sung in a funk band when I was in high school. Nice. You know, so you know, that's what it's all about. Sometimes it's about looking back on your past and deciding what made you happy back then, and why can't it make you happy now? Right. You know. When I was in rehab, somebody told me to say, look back on your life and look for that person in your life who you were and the one that you liked the most. Can you bring that person back? And it took me a little while to figure that out, but he's here, and that person came in the guise of Sergeant Gayent in the United States Army. So that person there is now who I'm trying to be, because when I was in the United States Army, I took care of everybody. So that's what I want to do again.
I salute you for that, for sure. And for those that don't know, Mike has been pouring into me behind the scenes and making sure that the mental health is a priority, because again, it's not, you know, it's for the youth, but it's for the elders and the in-between, that we do need this collectively, you know. Yes. So I do kind of want to segue back to Ant. You had mentioned a major person of influence was your mother. Yes. And from doing some research, she was known as the mama of the block, you know. Yes. And we just before the podcast started, you had discussed that there's a women's empowerment. Yes. Can you share a little bit about that?
So we do it's a misconception that it says Leaders of Men, that we do not cater to women. Mm-hmm. I have a wife, I have a daughter. They're major influences in my life.
Shout out.
Right. So I want to empower them. Right. So everything we talk about in our rites of passage, it applies to young women as well, because it's just respect. You know what I mean? It's just respect. It is, you know, all of our principles. It's those things. My wife, she carries herself very respectful. She's ex-military, Air Force. You know, my daughter, you know, between my wife and me, she's us. She carries herself with respect. You know, we put respect in our household, man. And but one of the major influences in my life was my uncle, my godfather, Reverend Eugene Bryan. He taught me the ultimate respect. Okay. You know, he's the first black man to go to Marin College. And he didn't just go there, he worked there. He would go scrub the floors, but he would take us as little kids to go scrub the floors and take the garbage out and those things. So we got in, that work ethic, but he's the father of the neighborhood. He was everybody who didn't have a father. He was their father. We had to live with them a few times in my life, as a kid. And you live with him. You had to measure. He measured bowls of cereal. You got 1 cup of cornflakes, 1 cup of milk. You know what I mean? And you couldn't live in his house unless you had to go to school. You had to go to church. And if you were at a certain age, you had to go to work. Though, in order to live with him, you had to do those things. You know what I mean? And he's the kind of dude, he would give you money to get to work, but on payday, I want my money back. You know what I'm saying? Which held you accountable. You know what I'm saying? He held you accountable. Me and him, we started a church together in North Oakland, where we fed the homeless.
That's positive.
And they would come in and get a good pancake and bacon sausage breakfast, and the homeless would stay for the service. You know what I mean? Okay. So he taught me a lot about respect. He taught me a lot about character and how to treat people. That Hurricane Katrina, he went down there, he fed thousands of people. You know what I mean? So major influence in my life. He was the man. He was the man in my life. When we were around him, he always, he was the respect guy. Reverend Eugene Bryant. So
shout out to him.
Man, rest in peace. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting, right? Yeah. So, just to touch back to the places where you experienced, some hardships, but you also kind of formed, like those were the formative years of your life. Mm-hmm. Would you say that your time in San Diego was more of like pure hardship, or that was more of the exact place where your natural resourcefulness or your grit came from, or would you say that was more of the Brooklyn or even in the Bay Area?
I am a firm believer in you adapt to whatever situation you're in.
Yes, absolutely.
You make it your own, no matter what it is. You survive, you keep going, you get knocked down, you pick yourself up, those things. So, from early East Oakland as a kid and, doing those things, and then San Diego and going through that stuff, and going to Brooklyn and going through that stuff, and then back to East Oakland at 17 and 18 and going through all of those things, man. And heartaches and pain and a loss of family and friends, and you adapt.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying? You live, it's still with you, and they're what they taught you or the memories you shared with them, that stays with you, because you're always going to say, man, I knew such and such, and he always said this, and
right.
He always said that, and he always did this way, and he carried himself. He said, Anthony, put your head up, put your chest out, look people in the eyes, don't look away. You know what I'm saying? And right. that shows respect. Give a firm handshake. You know what I mean? Those things. And I was taught that. When you stick your hand out, the handshake is the international sign of respect, okay, right? And so when I stick my hand out to shake your hand, I did my part. I led absolutely. With respect, right? Now it's up to you to reach your hand out and shake my hand or not, right? So you got to understand that you can't change people, right? But people always say, you got to earn my respect. Well, how can a stranger earn your respect? They can't, because you don't know them. Right. So, but now if you lead with respect, then you did your job. You did your part. You know what I mean? You should feel happy about that. Right. You know what I'm saying? I led with respect, so with that right there, I just build on to that. You know what I mean? And to knowing that I do put respect into everything I do, not just for respect and admiration for people, but this is your equipment. I respect your equipment. You know what I'm saying? I respect y'all job that you're doing. You know what I mean? And I respect how I put less salt or sugar in my food. And I just show people, or youngsters, not really show them, but have conversations about all kinds of different kinds of ways to show respect and to put respect into everything you do. Ergo's respect is everything.
You kind of answered my follow-up question because
Okay.
doing some research, it was said that Mr. Ivy was the one that not only taught you math, but he taught you how to look a man in his eyes
Yes.
and how to tie a tie.
Yes.
So
Yes.
just to kind of touch on it, the follow-up question was saying, how much of Mr. Ivy's blueprint are you actively using to teach the youth? And you know,
Yeah, so Mr. Ivy was my 7th grade math teacher
Shout
at
out.
Decatur 35, and so every Monday he would, when you were in his class, he either bought you a button-down shirt and you had to wear a tie. So if you didn't have it, he bought it for you.
That's love.
Every Monday you had to show up with that on, right? And so we're sitting across from each other, us as youngsters, 12 years old. We had to give each other job interviews. So he gave you a script, and he gave you a script, and this is how to do job interviews. He had blank applications, job applications. So we would fill out the applications. So he let you know. See, he's a realist. He let you know that a lot of y'all not gonna make it. Some of y'all gonna die. This is in New York. Some of y'all gonna die, get killed. Some of y'all gonna end up in jail. You know what I mean? And you know, some of you will, you know, do this and do that, those things. But he was a realist. He didn't lie to you. He was straight up. Right. You know what I mean? So that I really respected him. You know, I still couldn't do math. You know what I mean? But the respect part, I could always go get a job. 100%. You know what I'm saying? Right. With those values, and with him teaching me those things as I became older at 17, moving back to California, me going to get a job, I remember I couldn't read and spell, so I always carried a little red dictionary in my back pocket no matter where I went.
That's positive.
You know what I mean? I still have that to this day in a box at the house, that little red dictionary, and it just reminds me of who I used to be in those things, man. So you got Google now and spell check and this and that, but in the 70s it wasn't that. In the early 80s it wasn't that. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, man, Mr. Ivy was an A1 cat, man.
Shout out to him.
Yes, sir.
So that makes me wonder, you know, how did having those positive influences like Mr. Ivy help to offset the negative influences that you were seeing, you know, on the street?
Right. So that was just making your mother proud. You don't want to end up like Womp Womp on the corner. You're not going to be that person, and you're not going to disrespect her by doing something that's going to embarrass her. You know, she'll call you, Anthony E. Mcdonald, get over here. You know what I'm saying? Or, you know, I remember being 15 and starting to smoke cigarettes, and she let you know, say that stuff's going to kill you. And I'm looking at her, but you smoke cigarettes. And she's like, well, I'm grown. Right. But her thing was, you know, don't ever ask me for a cigarette. You know what I mean? And don't let somebody in the street come tell me you doing something and I don't already know you doing it. You know, so she held you accountable for certain things. Definitely. You know, she didn't check on me at school, you know. I you know, back in those days, you know, we didn't even have a phone, you know, so she couldn't just call the school, you know what I'm saying? And they couldn't just call home, you know what I mean? Because we didn't have a phone. Right. You know, you could send a letter, but by the time the letter get there, you got the mailbox out, you know what I mean? You know, us kids, you know what I'm saying? Right. So, but other than that, man, mom's main thing was respect, man. That was, you know, and how you carry yourself 100%. And you represent her. So, yeah.
I had a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Just following up. So you mentioned in a lot of your interviews that you didn't learn to read or write or read until later in life.
Right.
And that you used to jump trains in New York to skip school to just avoid it. What did you learn about human nature just sitting in those subways that you maybe weren't learning in school?
People, kindness, rudeness, respect for people. I'm a people watcher, so you know when you going from, you know, you on a train and you just looking at people, you seeing different cultures. New York is the melting pot, you know what I mean? So you go up to Eastern Parkway in New York, and it's like the Jewish community, you know, and he's like, wow, the Jewish community looks so nice, but it's right down the street from the black community, which looks run down. Why? You know what I mean? So you start to question those things. You know, you didn't see a lot of white people in our neighborhood. You know, you didn't consider Jewish people being white. They were just Jewish.
Right.
You know, you didn't see a lot of Asians because there wasn't a lot of Asians. It was more Arabs or, you know, South American people. You know, it was West Indian people all over the place, you know, and my family is from from Jamaica. You know what I mean? And so, but if I go to, that's Brooklyn. But if I go to Queens and I go to my grandmother's house, now my grandmother has a 3-story home. She has 2 Cadillacs in the driveway. She's a worker. Her house is big. You know what I mean? And those things, her backyard, you know, in New York, every house is together. You know what I'm saying? It's the brownstones, you know, but it's different cultures, man. And I learned, you know, once again, just people watching. Who does what, and you know, I come from the era you really couldn't look at white people in the face. You had to walk up straight. You had to, you know, they still walk past you and grab the purses, you know what I'm saying, and hold their purses tight. You know what I mean? They treat you because you're, you know, black. They treat you a certain way. Some people want to have pity on you. You know what I'm saying? I don't need your pity. You know what I mean? I just need your kindness. You know, those things, you know, so you learn a lot, man. You know, you learn a lot. So, but I tell you, learning how to read opened up a whole new world. You know what I mean? It opened up a whole new world. And I could read, but I never read a book. I was working at the law firm downtown Oakland, and I had already had a business, and I had already been through life. And one of the guys at lunchtime, this guy Bones, Asian cat, he would always curl up with a book. And my mom and my sisters read, but they read those romance novels. You know what I'm saying? It was those books. But him, he and I pass him up, and I'm going to go to sleep at lunch. And I said, dude, why I always see you with a book? And he goes, I just like to read, man. I just really like to read. It takes you away and this and that. And I got to thinking about that. So I had already had a son. So I went to his house, and his mom had a library. And so I took one of her books, or one of his books. It was a 3rd grade book, Sounders. And I read that book from cover to cover. It's a 3rd grade book. It's the happiest time of my life. I accomplished reading a whole book, and it made me feel so good, you know, and I read that book, man, and then I went back to her house, and my next book was Malcolm X by Alex Haley. It's 500 and something pages, and I read that book from cover to cover, and it was an easy read because there's a lot of cuss words, especially in the beginning. Right. And you know, Malcolm X, if you look at my phone, it's still my screensaver on my phone. Every defeat, every heartbreak, every loss contains its own seed, its own lessons on how to perform the next time. You know what I mean? So I read that, and then once I read that, I took that book from her and gave it back to her, and I'm super happy. Then I go home to my house where my wife we're at, and so now I'm getting all her books. I'm getting John Grisham books. I'm reading his whole catalog. I'm reading Deadly Rains books, and I'm reading Riding Dirty on I-95, the Ratchet books. And, you know what I'm saying? And so it's opening up a whole new world. And then also my 2 younger children, teaching them how to read through me struggling how to read, and they're great readers now. You know what I mean? And, you know, like I said, my daughter runs my business. My youngest son does cybersecurity. He's in college doing communications and, you know, doing those things, man. And so it's a great thing. And even in teaching my mentoring class, and I see youngsters that's struggling reading, and hold them after class, and I say, hey, look, I see you're going through it, and let's get your mom or your dad over here, and then I'm going to show you how to read, and I'm going to give you the same little books that I did. You know, there's 3 different theirs, and there's, you know, this and those words and those words, and so it's some great stuff, man. But it comes from that. You know what I mean? From that, learning how to read at 40 years old, learning to read books at 40 years old was something. So, yeah. Right.
So you lived in East Oakland, San Diego, and Brooklyn all before you turned 18.
Yes.
And so how did adapting to the vastly different street dynamics of the West Coast and the East Coast shape the way you read people and read rooms today?
Well, once again, when you're coming from California, and you go into to Brooklyn, you got to speed up to catch. You got to catch up to what's going on in the culture, what's going on in the neighborhood, the community. You got to speed up. You got to learn different things on how to navigate through that system, And then 1985. Moving back to California, to East Oakland, 69th and Wells Street, it's the dope game. You know what I mean? And so you got 16-year-old millionaires, you know what I'm saying? 17-year-old millionaires with real nice cars. So now you have to slow down to catch up. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't know how to navigate because it's not New York. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm from California, but my mental is New York. You know what I'm saying? So, but California it's you just learning, man. And I'll be honest, I met a young lady when I was 17, a white young lady, and she cultured me. She took me to fine restaurants at 17. She had 10 credit cards. We went to Napa. We went to Monterey. We went to Lake Tahoe. We went to San Simeon. She took me to all of these places and eating at these fine restaurants.
Okay.
I'd never been at any of these places, but just imagine all these places that I'm going to. I'm the only black man in there. You know what I'm saying? So you got one restaurant where they pushing down the cart of the daily catch, and I'm like, I'm not eating that. You know what I'm saying? Right. And she goes, no, that's the catch of the day. You know what I'm saying? Oh, okay. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. So it's I'm being cultured. You know what I mean? And so she taught me a lot. She taught me how to drive. You know what I mean? She bought me my first car. Those type of things. You know what I'm saying? So I was living in a complete different world. You know what I'm saying? I've lived many lives.
Right, definitely.
I've lived many lives, man, and but she took me all around different places, and I learned a lot. Santa Cruz, Half Moon Bay, all of these places, LA, and those things. I learned a lot from 17 to we were together from 17 to 27.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So so that right there, man. But it taught you a lot.
100%.
And then it taught you a lot about racism. My mother, who I thought didn't have a racist bone in her body, but she said, if you go to LA with that white girl, don't come back to my house. I was like, oh my God, Mom.
Right.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So,
right.
but my mother knew about the racism more than I did. You know what I'm saying? And she let you know people are going to hate you because of who you date. You know what I mean? So that right there, I'd never really experienced something like that before. But yeah, that was a time in my life. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
And kind of speaking of how Mom would say, when you go outside, you represent me.
Yes.
And that's focusing on her rather than just the last name. So, why do you think that specific distinction carries so much more weight for a young man, more than just protecting the family name?
Well, I didn't want to let my mother down.
Definitely.
I knew my mother cared. I knew my mother struggled. I had a conversation with my father before he passed away, and he came to my house, and my family, we were just coming back from camping, and he says, Anthony, this is your father. I'm on my way to your house, da, da, da. He's coming from Florida. And so I said, okay, cool. So I went and got my children who he had never met. I got my brother's children who he had never met, right? So now we all are at my house, and he's looking around the house. He says, man, you didn't have to put all this food out. And I said, well, I cook anyway. You don't know that about me. I love to cook. Turns out he had loved to cook. I found a lot of things when he passed away, but he had asked me, he was looking around. He says, when you were 12 years old, you asked me, could you come live with me? And I said, I did? He was like, yeah, you did. And I'm like, well, obviously you said no. You know what I'm saying? And da-da-da. And I said, well, you said no. He said, well, he was like, I told you no because your mother needed you. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, I'm one of the people, I take a conversation and I go analyze it and break it down and, and I thought about it, say, you know what? He said my mom needed him, but my mom needed me, but he didn't know at 12 years old, I needed him. Right. I was going through the toughest time in my life, not just being homeless, but trying to figure out who I am.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? At 12 years old, you know, it's tough. You know what I mean? And so, but I never got a chance to tell him that I really needed you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You know, but as me doing Leaders of Men and those things, I realize that there's, you know, generational wealth. You know what I'm saying? But there's also generational trauma. You know what I'm saying? He didn't know his father, you know, or he knew his father, but him and his mother, my grandmother, was in a domestic violence thing. You know what I'm saying? So my father was a domestic violence guy. You know what I'm saying? So he dealt with all of that stuff and, you know, those things. So, you know, you say, hey, would you be a better man with your father in your life, or would you be the same man that you are without him? So I tend to take lessons wherever I can get them. I analyze it and I give it back, and I make sure I put that in my mentoring, because a lot of our youngsters are going through that in this world today. So
facts of life. So my second to last question though, just thinking back, you know, had you not moved, or how different do you think your story would be or would have ended had the family not moved from Brooklyn and made that transition back to California?
Yeah, we don't know the unknown.
The unknown,
You know,
definitely.
it's the
Mystery
unknown, man. You know, wherever God takes you, once again, you're just going to adapt.
100%.
Because when we left East Oakland going to San Diego, we had never been in that environment. But it turns out we were adapting into it.
Right.
And then moving from San Diego to Brooklyn, and you're like, wow, oh my God, this is just crazy.
Right.
And then you spend 5 years there. And now, you know, you take that 5 years and you start to develop into that culture, into that community and what they're doing. And you pick and choose who you want to be. You know what I mean? Your character will shine through no matter what it is. Your character will shine through. If you're a good person, it'll come out and it'll shine throughout your life.
Facts.
But if you're a liar, a cheater, or a thief, it's going to come out in your character, and, you know, it'll come out through your life. So
100%. Well, right. That brings me to the final question, and you kind of touched on the one word concept, but at the same time, for this being the Rooted In series, what is Anthony Mcdonald rooted in for you to tell the people?
my family.
Family.
My family to me is just everything. I support them. I love them with all my heart. They embrace me. They embrace my dreams. You know, they've seen me through. They've seen me. You know, through COVID, I lost like 25 people, and what that does to a person. You know, and my wife saying that it's okay. We're here. Right. You know, Anthony, I see you going. She's like, because they see you. Right. They see you every day. And so, you know, she makes a call to my pastor and she's like, you need to talk to Anthony. Right. You know, and then, you know, those things. And so your family can see you, your ups and downs, and you help them through everything that they're going through. You're letting them know that you can talk to me about anything. You know what I'm saying? And I promise you I'm going to be here for you. You know, right. And I sort of use that with everybody that I meet. You know, if I make you a promise that I got you, I really got you. You know what I mean? And I do that with my mentoring, but it's my family, my wife, my children. You know, you know, yeah, it's those people, man. That's your everyday. That's your heart.
Facts of life.
Yes, sir.
Definitely. So it's definitely been an honor. I definitely want to say I'm excited to see what the future has in store. For the people, where can we find you? What is your handle? How can we get in contact with you if we did want to extend, you know, if we did want to just get to know you in person, or at least just ask you a few questions? Where can we find you on social media?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I love this that you can Google people now.
So
people Google me, or you can Google Leaders of Men Inc.
Leaders of Men.
You can see that, and it's on the social medias. Yeah, our website is Leaders of Men Inc. at .org.
Gotcha.
That's the website. You can email me at leadersofmeninc gmail.com.
Gotcha.
You know, those things, but. Yeah, it's those things. And then, you know, my nephew said, "Hey, you're an open book," and I was like, "What?" Hey, I'm offended. And he's like, "No, you give information away like crazy."
Pass the plug.
And I was like, "You know what? Okay, I don't think we should be hoarding information from anybody. You know, if we can help, then do it. You know what I'm saying? If you can help somebody, then do it. So it's just Leaders of Men Inc. at gmail.com. Hit me off with an email, and we always there. And if I can answer or any question or help any youngster through whatever they're going through, just give me a call or hit me off with an email.
There it is there. And thank you once again to Mike Gayent, who helped to line this up. This is a Southside Wellness Alliance, and now we are the Leaders of Men. So this is the introduction to a collaboration that's soon to be coming to a city near you. So this is the Rooted In podcast. This is sponsored by In the Clouds Media. Shout out to the man behind the production and the engineer, Fabian. So until next time, peace and blessings.
Love. Yeah.
Woo.
All right.
That was great.
Was that all right? Okay. All right, man. All right.
Great.
Back to the basics. No time for complacency. Occupy space. No evictions or vacancies. Time ain't go wait. Apply pressure gracefully. Soon they'll be thanking me. Can't pull no pranks. Pour righteous teachings and light.